Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, regardless of where you are. And as you know, if you are on my lives, I always start off the same way with each live because I do think it's so super cool that regardless of where we are or what time of day it is for you, we all come together at the same time. So we're going to kick it off with just a quick intro, just a quick hello and where you're located. I am Denise Martha Bachman, located here in Houston, Texas. Niraj is so super cool because he's way on the other side. So Niraj, maybe you could share with us where you're located.
Yes, I'm based in Northern Ireland in the United Kingdom.
Awesome. And for those of you that are out there watching, whether you're team live or team replay, let us know where you are located by putting that down in the comments. I'll stream comments throughout our session today, but I want to welcome all of you here. We have an amazing opportunity to have conversation with the amazing Niraj. Niraj, I'm going to let him do his own introduction in just a second. But as you all know, we're in a moment and a time where in sales, we have a lot of opportunities for us, and I use the word opportunities from a positive perspective, for us to work on our objection handling as well as those that are just being ghosted. I know that that is happening really regularly. So that's going to be our topic today on Human AI Sales, the Sellovatorz Live. Niraj, we met I don't know, here on LinkedIn a couple of years ago in the comments and just engaged over the course of the time. And he is, I mean, I've just been following his story. He's got an amazing personal story. I just love the man. And I'm so honored that you are here with us, Niraj. I would never do you the service or the justice that you deserve by introducing you. So if you wouldn't mind just kicking us off with your own introduction.
Thank you so much, Denise. Hi, everybody. I'm Niraj. I'm a LinkedIn top voice, a one-to-one sales coach and a trainer. People always hire me when they want to close more deals. Whenever I spend time with them, closing more deals is never a problem. The problem is people do not know how to open deals. They don't know how to engage with people. They don't know how to overcome objections, and they cannot deal with ghosting. And they really struggle with outreach. But once you get those things right, the closing isn't that difficult. So I help everybody else with everything. Up
All right, but Niraj, that was a whole list right there. I mean, that was a lot. That seems a bit overwhelming. So we're only going to cover a couple of those.
I have to say it. I do, because every single person, nobody ever calls me saying, hey, can you help us overcome objections? They always say we need to close more sales or win more sales or get more deals. Mm-hmm. And when you analyze them, the problem is always in the beginning and the middle. It's never at the very end.
Yeah. I mean, if you do all the things at the beginning and the middle right, the end just happens in a more logical and natural way than if you don't get any of those two, you'll never get to close anyway. Yeah, interesting. Well, so there was a stat. So there's a lot to unpack there because Niraj has had his own business for a while. He's also an author. He is a speaker. He's done TEDx talks. He has obviously the top voice badge, and that is not just something new. He's had that actually for a couple of years, if I'm not mistaken. You can share that with me.
That's correct.
Yeah, so the man has achieved so much already. But you know what I find super interesting these days, we were just having a conversation, is that we are challenged with the way we're selling today. We all know it's evolved. I mean, how sales evolves all the time, but it's really how we adapt to that evolution. And what I'm finding right now, Niraj, is in all the years I've been in selling, we are doing a poor job of adapting to those changes. And it feels like to me that we are doing a worse job at selling than we did pre-pandemic. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but that's what I feel like. What are your thoughts?
I think you brought up a very important point. Pre-pandemic or even during the pandemic, people were just in survival mode in the pandemic. So I understood why there were so many bad copy and paste emails and so many bad LinkedIn DMs. I get that. But the pandemic was 3 years ago. And the world has changed so much. Technology has advanced so much that people are more self-aware now than ever. but yet sales hasn't changed. I get more terrible emails now than ever. I get more terrible LinkedIn DMs now than ever. And by the way, I rarely subscribe to anything, and I still get more bad messages than ever. So yeah, sales desperately needs to evolve. And the few people I know who are doing it right are having great success because they're doing it right.
Because they're willing to evolve, because they're willing to make the change. Is it just the lack of evolution? Is it the and I mean, I have my own opinion, but what we're finding, moving into this objection handling, right? We're finding that more and more people are not engaging in a way that is ideal, we'll say, in sales. And, you just briefly touched on it, all these crazy DMs that we're getting. Are people objecting because we're not adapting, or are people not adapting because they don't know how to handle the objections?
I believe it's a mixture of both. A lot of people, if you're working for somebody else, quite often you have unrealistic targets which haven't evolved since, 2020. Before that, it was make 40 phone calls a day or spend 90 minutes on the phone. That's not really realistic anymore. And it's not a smart target to have. Yes, some people still have those exact same targets. Rather than making 40 phone calls a day, have 5 brilliant conversations a day. That is a way better target. Try and book a meeting a day, not a meeting that you rush or where you have to say silly things to somebody or force them to meet you. Just get one meeting booked a day and have 5 great conversations. That is way more effective. So I think the metrics people are being set and KPIs are outdated. And you have to understand as well, a lot of people in sales don't understand how businesses run. And there's a real lack of understanding. And most salespeople now have to really have a better understanding of business. And that's something they don't have. I had a salesperson yesterday say, hi. So yesterday, for example, was Monday. And he sent me a message Monday afternoon at 4:00, a terrible message. And the call to action was, are you free for a meeting Tuesday morning? Now, just to be clear, he messaged me on Monday afternoon for a meeting on Tuesday morning, somebody I'd never spoken to in my life.
Of course you're not going to be available for that.
Yeah, of course, I'm a business owner. I have nothing better to do with my life than just find half an hour free for a complete stranger. It doesn't work like that. Now, if you've been recommended to me from a client of mine, I will find time for you. If it's someone like you, Denise, you spend a lot of time, liking, commenting my posts. So if you say, look, you'd like to come to my LinkedIn Lives, like, of course, because you're a person of value to me. But if I don't know you, why would I give my time to you? You have to be a person of value. And salespeople are just not giving value. I mean, people are a bit unsure what to do in sales or business. They default to what I can't think of a better word than this, but they default to stupid. So what they do is they think, okay, I'm not getting very far here. I'll just buy some terrible data and I'll message 1,000 people. And maybe a few of them will say yes to me and become clients. And that's what they do. They send out deeply impersonal copy and paste emails, hoping 1 or 2 of those will land. And that is not only bad for your reputation, it's bad for the world of sales in general.
I know that's what we were just talking about prior to jumping on, is that what I find is the more and more of these bad activities that we see, and I hate to call them bad sales people, because unfortunately I don't think that they know any better, because they don't have anyone teaching them any different, right? So you don't know what you don't know. So I'd hate to just label them all as bad salespeople. I mean, they kind of are, but it is really just bad activity, bad behavior, bad processes that they have. How are you finding that, because you do one-on-one coaching, but you also do coaching with organizations. How are you finding organizations that are willing to adapt? I mean, because it's an entire different strategy now because organizations have to understand that the metrics they have in place are outdated and don't apply. How many people that are you finding within organizations who are willing to make the changes so that they are setting their teams up for success?
Oh, very few. What happens is at the moment, 75% of people are missing their sales target. Mm-hmm. That's up from 72% last year. It's currently 75, which is a huge number. And instead of improving, people are going to their bosses saying, can you invest in some technology? Can you invest in some automation? Can you invest in AI? And so the bosses are spending a huge amount of money on things that don't work, like LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which is probably the biggest waste of money I've ever seen exist. And I'm sorry, I love LinkedIn, but Sales Navigator is the worst, because what happens is people, instead of trying to sell better, get their companies to spend tens of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of pounds on Sales Navigator and then spam 50 people a month. Or they say to their bosses, buy some automation or spend money on data. But what they're not doing is improving their sales skills, which is what you have to do. If you can't get the basics right, there is no point you spending money on Sales Navigator or AI or automation or anything. That is all just a waste of time and waste of money. And it's like, going to a doctor and a doctor saying, here, take this medication, without actually knowing what the problem is. You got to treat the problem. You don't just give medication out and say, take this. So more people need to go to their bosses, or more bosses need to take responsibility and say, you know what, instead of this quick fix, let's try and find a solution. And the best solution that I have seen people who have succeeded are those who are smart enough to ask for help from people like me who are in the trenches every day. So not only am I having to work with salespeople every day to generate more sales, not only do I have to work with business owners every day to help them grow their businesses, I'm a business owner myself, Denise. I have to stay on top of things and grow my business as well. So I'm kind of learning from all three angles every single day.
Well, I mean, no matter what anyone says, as a business owner, we are all salespeople, whether you want to admit it or not, right? We all have, because revenue is the lifeblood of our organizations, our businesses. And the only way you're going to gain revenue is by getting out there, putting yourself out there and selling in some form or another. Whether you like it or not, you are responsible. You are a salesperson. I talk about that all the time. Well, let's dive into the topic at hand, because we could have an hour to 3 hours conversation around the poor job that I feel like we're doing in sales and all the problems that we could try to attempt to solve. But when we're talking about, those that are actually doing an okay job, who are working with coaches, who are improving their skills, who are actually out there listening and building relationship and truly solving to the problems, the business problems that our buyers have. When they are handling, or when they are prospecting, or they're in the middle of a sales process and they're struggling with objection handling, what are some of the things that you coach or that you work with your clients on that seem to be the most helpful?
Okay, the way people are having success right now in sales, and by the way, this isn't just right now, this will be in the future as well. First of all, you make the sales email personal. So out of the, 2,000 LinkedIn DMs and emails I've received so far this year, I have met one person out of 2,000. And the reason I met him is because he read a post of mine, sent me a message saying how much he liked the post and how much value he got from the post. Then he talked about his product in less than a paragraph. And he asked, is this of interest to you? Now let's just break this down, because it's very important. He made the effort to research me, which most people don't do. The ones who are successful do their research. Second of all, he didn't send me a long email full of features and no benefits like most people do. He kept it succinct. And thirdly, he didn't do the old cliche of, hi, I hope you're well, which most salespeople do, or here's my Calendly link. Are you free Tuesday or Thursday for 15 minutes, which most salespeople do. He said, is this of interest to you? Because the role of the first point of contact is always to share value, show you're a bit different, and actually get somebody's interest. And people who are doing those things, Denise, are the ones who are having success and then taking things to the next level.
And those, I honestly think those are the ones who very seldom see the objections. If they do, it's not in the sales process. It's not good timing. And you find that very on, because you'll find someone who says, hey, I'm not interested. And that's okay. You can qualify that in and qualify it out very quickly. And then you move on, rather than trying to hound them through a process and then get the true objection in the middle. And then you've just wasted everyone's time. Wouldn't you agree?
100%. Anything else I've got in addition to that? Oh, the power of follow-up. So of say the 2,000 people who spam me cold this year, I would say less than 5% followed up.
Yeah.
Less than 5%. And most often follow up saying, "Hi, what did you think of the message I sent you last week?" I mean, it's so lazy. It's
Well,
beyond.
and most of the time we haven't read that message. So if you're going to, I mean, and that's just lazy follow up, in my opinion. I mean, horrible follow up. So, you know, where you're headed is what I hear you saying is that it's not really about handling objections. It's about doing the right things at the beginning of the sales process so that you avoid those objections.
Absolutely. You do all
Yeah.
things right at the beginning. You'll often find out the objections are much easier to handle later on. And also they tend to happen later on in the process. And it does tend to be a matter of, okay, your rate is too high, or we're not quite ready yet, or we already have an existing supplier, which is absolutely fine. It's easier to deal with those. But if you're getting objections right at the beginning, it's nearly always because you're not being personalized, you're not making an effort, your outreach message is far too long, and you sound just like everybody else. You know, if you look at the all sales LinkedIn trainers, for example, in the UK, in terms of knowledge, I wouldn't even make the top 10, not even the top 20. There are people way smarter than me, and they know every single nuance and every single element of every single thing happening on LinkedIn. I don't. And that's deliberate because most clients don't care. What clients care about, for example, if you're on LinkedIn, is how does my profile look? Are people engaging with my content? How do I generate incoming inquiries or leads? And how do I convert those leads? That is what the majority of people care about. So having 50 new releases on a LinkedIn product profile in a year means nothing. But people obsess about the nothing. I don't. I obsess about the big stuff. And that makes a big difference. So make sure you're focusing on what people care about, which is why you have to understand people, which is why it's really good to understand how businesses operate, because most salespeople have no idea how businesses operate. They have no idea how busy business owners are, and they have no idea how to sell to business owners. I was listening to a demo last week, for example, and I heard a SDR, a sales development rep, speak to a CEO. And he spoke to the CEO exactly how he would speak to his friend. Now, what do CEOs care about? They care about market share, profit, legacy, beating the competition, leaving a mark, a legacy. These are things that CEOs care about. What was this person trying to do? Sell this product. It didn't work. And the CEO shut him down very quickly. Now, when I speak to CEOs, my language changes completely. So it's very important to understand the person you're selling to and to use the appropriate language with that person.
Appropriate language, appropriate tone. I mean, there's so much. It's really called business acumen. If I were to thumb that up, it's having business acumen and knowing the persona in which you are engaging with. And therefore, when you do know those two things, when you know the persona, then your business acumen can change accordingly, because who you sell to, you know, for example, someone could sell to me very differently because I'm a single solopreneur. You could probably sell differently to me than you would someone who works at BMC Software, which is where I used to work, right? I mean, the CEO there and then the CEO of my little company, you can talk to us very differently because we relate differently. I mean, he has to be, the CEO there has to be this, you know, bigger than wow. I mean, he has to carry himself differently than I have to carry myself, if we want to sum it up. So you have to change your conversation. You have to change your tone. You have to change your approach. Everything has to be different when you're having conversations with CEOs, CTOs, CIOs within large organizations than if you're messaging and having a conversation with someone like myself. I mean, just the reality of it.
100%. Couldn't agree with you more.
Well, you know, I talk about this all the time. I talk about personalization. I did a whole series on DMs and how to do a better job of actually engaging in the DMs. One of the things that I get as maybe an objection or a question is, well, doesn't it take longer to do that? Well, sure. When you personalize, it does take a step or two longer. But in the long run, what I don't really fully understand is why you wouldn't want to take that on and build quality versus quantity. And, I've been in sales for over 30 years. It's always been for leadership quantity, but for us as sales rep, it's got to be quality over quantity. And I think that's where there is this disconnect and people are being challenged. And I think the junior sales reps are the ones who don't really know how to break through that and find their own way, still managing to leadership.
Absolutely. I mean, I did business very recently with somebody who I helped out 2 years ago. This is how important relationships are, by the way. And for everybody looking for a quick fix, please listen to this. So much of business is relationships. And 2 years ago, somebody had lost their job. They were on LinkedIn. I had a look at their LinkedIn profile and I contacted them saying, look, I've nothing to sell to you, but you know what? I've lost my job before. And I found it really difficult. I had a family to support at the time. My daughter was younger. I can't imagine what you must be feeling, but I sort of imagine it. I'd like to just help you with your LinkedIn profile. I don't want anything in return. I don't want a recommendation. I just want to help you out and get back on your feet and get a job. And I do that at least once or twice a month with people who have never spoken to me. A majority of them accept it. The rest of them either have too much going on or they think I'm going to sell to them, but majority of people accept that and I help them out. You cannot begin to imagine the number of people that reached out to me since then. They've got a job, maybe a year later, they got promoted, and either they hire me or they recommend me to HR or to the FD or to the CEO, who then hires me. And I end up being the sales trainer for that company for a half day or a full day or 2 days. That is a great example of giving somebody value up front, asking for nothing in return, just trying to help people. And then business comes your way. But it's long term. It's value first, it's long term. Value first, long term. And these are just good everyday tactics to have when you're working in sales, whether you work 9 to 5 or whether you're a business owner.
Or whether you are working for a larger corporation or a smaller corporation. I think the challenge, though, that we're finding when having conversations is that we still can't get leadership to make the shift. So when you're coaching these clients who work for a corporation who are still challenged with, the leadership and leadership still wanting quantity again and not really over quality, how are you coaching them to break through that at all?
Well, unfortunately, you have to speak to them about it. So if, for example, I don't work with that many big corporations, maybe once every month or once every 6 weeks. Most of mine, I would say, are small to medium-sized businesses. But if I ever do work with a big corporation every 6 to 8 weeks, let's say, first of all, it takes a long time to win these deals. People get very excited when I go speak to a $4 billion company like Terex. They think, oh my God, Terex, they're huge. They're one of the biggest construction companies in the world. You're so lucky. I'm like, have you any idea how long it took to win? It takes so long. That's the first thing. It takes a long time. But second of all, whenever you speak to bigger companies in general, and the person contacts you, you have to ask, who else do we have to influence to move this deal forward? Not who do I have to speak to? Who else do we have to influence? Because from my experience, I've worked with companies like yours, there's normally 6 to 12 people involved in the process. Most of them are influencers. There's usually only 1 or 2 decision makers, sometimes 1, sometimes 2. But ultimately, there's a lot of influencers. And the influencer can be the sales director, the HR director. If it's LinkedIn training, unfortunately, marketing usually get involved, even though they shouldn't, because most marketing people can't use LinkedIn properly and give terrible advice on LinkedIn as well.
Yes.
And they don't get trained properly on LinkedIn. They make it up as they go along. And marketing constantly give bad advice and say things to the sales team like, just share what we do. That's all you have to do. That's what majority, 80 to 85% of marketing people, that's the advice they give to sales. Just share what we do, which is terrible advice. Anyway, I could talk all day about that. But you have to find out who else is involved in the process. And you have to literally be speaking to these people. Because if you don't, if you only get, say, 3 or 4 people involved, then you're playing poker. And you got to speak to at least 5 companies in the hope of winning one. And for me personally, I don't like playing the game of hope or the game of luck. If I get lucky, I'm so grateful, but I don't like to play luck. You have to speak to people involved. And sometimes people will say, look, the decision maker won't speak to you. The other decision makers won't speak to you. If you send details to me, we'll pass it on. And to those people, I often say no. So in business, it's very important to know when to say no to people, because you can easily waste 3 to 6 months of your life speaking to somebody and chasing somebody saying, hi, has your boss made a decision yet? Can I have your boss's details? No. Okay. You're just wasting your time in those companies because you're rarely going to get anywhere. And don't forget, a lot of the time, Denise, when people want rates from you, it has nothing to do with them hiring you. They just want to see what is competitive. They just want to go back to their existing suppliers and say, hey, this guy Niraj is charging less than you. I want you to lower your rate. So you have to understand, again, business acumen, which is a brilliant term you used earlier. Understanding how businesses work and why they make the decisions that they make.
Agreed. And, I just talked to someone here recently, and we were talking about how I could potentially work with him and help him improve over what he's doing. And he said, I'm struggling because I have this account. I had been working it for 3 years, and then my buyer left, and now I have to start all over. And I'm like, dude, you need me more than ever, because you should have had, and we call those, instead of influencers here in the US, we call those stakeholders, right? There are multiple stakeholders now. So you can't just work with one buyer, with one stakeholder, because ultimately there are more than one stakeholder. There are more than one. That's horrible grammar. There is usually more than one stakeholder in an organization. There are usually, when you're working a deal, there are usually multiple stakeholders. There may only be one decision maker, but there are multiple stakeholders. You've got to go what I call wide, not just deep, but you have to go wide, because now he has to start all over. If he'd have done his job and had conversations and gone wide, when that person left, it might have been just a little bit of a blip. And he could have but he still could have moved on. It might have taken him back maybe a couple of steps, but not completely starting all over again. I mean, we're talking $1 million deal, and the guy has to start all over. It took him 3 years to get to this point.
Listen, I've made that mistake too. I've worked with clients, not as long as 3 years, but sometimes 8 or 9 months, and the person leaves, and I go and speak to their colleague and like, yeah, we don't know who you are. We have no knowledge of that deal. We don't care,
Yeah.
And they really don't, because they're dealing with their own things, and it is heartbreaking. That's why you always have to be speaking to multiple people in a company. It's very important. And again, most salespeople who are successful, that's what they do. So I've written this down so far. So you got personalization, you got business acumen, short outreach, succinct and to the point, giving massive value. Don't sound like everybody else. So these are just brilliant examples of what people can be doing right now to achieve much more success in sales.
I agree. And I think that one of the very first step that we have to take is we have to acknowledge that what we're doing today isn't working. That has to be step one. And then once we acknowledge that what we're doing today isn't working, then what we've got to do is understand that we aren't going to be able to learn by ourselves. Like, if you already had the tools in your tool chest, you wouldn't have had these problems. So now you got to seek out help. You've got to find whether that is someone like yourself, Niraj, or whether it's YouTube videos, whatever, going back to your management and saying, hey, I need an enablement system of some sorts in place, something. But we have to take matters in our own hands as salespeople in order to change the trajectory of where sales is going. Because I think it was, you mentioned it, Salesforce.com issued a report where only 28% of salespeople hit their quota in 2023. That's horrific.
Yeah.
Horrific.
And it's currently, that's correct. It's now worse. I mean, literally 25% of people hit their target this year. 25%. That means 3 out of 4 people are going to miss out. And I just wish those 3, and don't get me wrong, there's always a lot of variable factors involved. Some of those might have a tough boss. Some of those might have a boss that doesn't really know what they're doing. Some of those people might have unfairly high targets. I get it. I've worked in sales 30 years. I get it. At the same time, I guarantee a lot of those people who miss their targets won't be sitting down and going, what can I do to improve my self-awareness? What can I do to improve myself? No, a lot of them will blame their bosses, blame their companies. Instead of improving themselves, they start to look for work elsewhere. You know what? This is a big company I'm working for. I'm going to work for a smaller company. That's not the solution. The solution is improve yourself, invest in yourself. And investing in yourself is not being cheap and watching YouTube videos. You can learn some good stuff on YouTube, but you will learn 10 times faster than a coach. You will learn 10 times faster learning from somebody. This is my 30th year in sales. I still pay coaches every month. I still go to conferences. I still invest. I read a book a week. I mean, I spend so much time studying. People find it crazy, but that's how when times are tough, you're still doing well in your job. You know, so many of my competition for the last 6 months have been calling me saying, look, do you mind if I speak to you in privately? And I speak to them in private. I said, sure, look, we're really struggling right now. You seem to be quite busy. What are you doing? And some of them really hesitate and beat around the bush. And it takes them a while to ask me that question. And I tell them what I'm doing. And they're like, oh. And I always say, okay, are you going to read the books? Are you going to go to the conferences? Are you going to invest in yourself? And some of them are smart and they listen. But a lot of them don't listen. And 6 months later, they're still struggling. They still can't make money because they haven't listened and they haven't taken action. And that's what you have to do. Find people more successful than you, who you respect, who have values. That's very important. There's a lot of successful people that don't have values. Find successful people you admire that have values and ask them, what are they doing? And if they don't tell you, ask them how much money you have to pay them to get an answer, because they won't say no then to you. And that's what I do. I surround myself with people who are different to me. I surround myself with successful women, which again, not many men do. And I ask questions. What is it you're doing? You know, tonight I've got a meeting with a very successful woman in America, Carol. And how did I meet her? She's mutual friends with my friend Laurie. And Laurie said, Laurie, I want to work with somebody that's successful. How do I do it? She introduced me, but you have to ask the question. And you have to put your ego aside and say, I want to learn and get better no matter where I'm at. And as long as you're constantly learning, you're constantly getting better. Last week, I saw Bruce Springsteen in concert. He's 74 years old. He doesn't have to play a single bit of music ever. And he's doing 3-hour concerts, which most people in the world cannot do because he loves what he does. John Bon Jovi just turned 60. He is as energetic, lively as ever. Billy Crystal, I think, is in his 70s now. He said he has more energy than when he was in his 30s. Paul McCartney, I think, is probably approaching 80. Mick Jagger is 80. I saw the Rolling Stones 2 years ago. Incredible. Mick Jagger still 6 days a week does ballet, Pilates, yoga, running, things to keep in shape. They don't have to, but they do it because they know they have to keep working themselves. And if they do it, you have absolutely no excuse for not doing it yourself.
I agree. I mean, I always say the same motto each time, which is, if you're not learning, you're dying. If you're not growing, you're dying, right? If you're not learning, you're not growing, and then you're most certainly dying. The only way we can keep, although I do think technology is going to enable us to live forever. But until that point comes, we still have to, if you want to survive, if you want to live longer, if you want to be around for your family, you've got to challenge yourself. And that, whether that is in life or specifically in sales, look, I mean, it's getting more and more expensive for us to live every day. You've got to earn your money somehow in order to pay the expenses. Sales can be so rewarding and you can earn so much money, but only if you're doing it in a way in which you are partnering with your buyers, that you're helping to solve these problems. You're making, I always say, make them a hero. And the only way you can do that is if you're building a relationship with them. They want to be heroes. Yeah. All right. Well, I know we're running short on time, so I wanted to just really give you an opportunity to share with us how best to engage with you, how best to work with you, Niraj.
Now, look, if you listen to this and you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, please send me a personalized invite. I reject most generic invites because I have no interest in generic connections. I have no interest in generic relationships. So please send a personalized invite and say you saw me speaking on Denise's show, or go to nirajkapur.com and have a look at my website and just get some value from there first. But most importantly, just please start learning. Please start taking action.
Yeah, I think, again, we got to recognize that what we're doing is not right. And we've got to then, secondly, take on ownership for actually trying to improve ourselves and upskilling. And 3, then we need to also seek out individuals who can help us do that. Niraj is an amazing individual. If you're not following him, go and do that today. I love his content. I've learned so much about him. And what I love about Niraj is he has that great mixture of sharing his personal life, so you get to know him, as well as all of his successes. And so you just want to engage with him. You want to learn more about him. You want to have conversation. So put yourself out there, go seek someone out like Niraj. I'm also here. So you see me every day in LinkedIn. I'm always, well, unless I've been without power. So we had bad weather here in Houston. So I was offline for a few days, but super excited to be here. So go out and seek someone like Niraj, ask for help, improve, upskill, help us ensure that sales doesn't continue to be devalued. Let's turn those numbers around from 25% hitting their numbers to much higher than that. Let's see us all kill ourselves in 2024. Ask Niraj how to do that. Follow him. Do a better job at uncovering the areas in which you can improve yourself. I want to thank everyone for being here today. Niraj, I most certainly want to thank you for being here. I appreciate all that you do and really just the inspiration that you've given me over the last couple of years. So thank you very much.
No, that means a lot to me. And you're a good example of how sales works and business works. You spent years turning up my posts, liking and commenting, giving value. So when it came time for you to ask me a favor to be in your show, I didn't even hesitate. I was like, yeah, absolutely. That is how business is done.
I appreciate that, Niraj. Thank you very much. I want to thank everyone for being here today. I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your day. You can find us both here on LinkedIn. I'll be around more now that I have power. As of last night, I even got to blow dry my hair, which has been really exciting. It's the little things, Niraj.
Lucky you. I haven't done that for about 20 years, but lucky you.
Yeah, I do have a little bit more hair than you. But, you know, that's okay. Women are supposed to. Men are okay if you don't, right? All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for being here. Have a great, again, rest of your day. And we'll see you all back here next week for the next Sellovatorz Live. Otherwise, I'm here tomorrow morning for Caff-AI Chats. Talk to you guys soon. Have a great rest of your day.